How's it going, everyone? Andrew Robinson here, back at it with another Max MSP tutorial video. In this video, we are going to talk about the brand new Max MSP object Rainbow, and it is a revolutionary audio object for Max MSP because you can take all your code you make within Rainbow and export it to anywhere. C++, Arduino, a web page, as a VST plugin. It's all possible now. So we're going to just break down some of the absolute basics of getting used to working with Rainbow and maybe do a couple different videos on a couple different things. Today, I'm going to focus on one of the super cool new features that Rainbow has, aside from what I just mentioned, which is very easy polyphony. Polyphony used to be kind of difficult to do. If you've ever used the poly object, it may have been a little confusing. Rainbow makes that super easy now. So let's just jump right into it. First, what you're going to need to do is you're going to have to click on the package manager, open up your package window, and find the new Rainbow package in here. You can do that by typing in the search bar Rainbow, and it's RNBO. And this is what pops up. I highly recommend downloading all of these because some of these have built-in features like this guitar pedal one where you can, easily just drag and drop in like a flange or a reverb or something if you want, and it's already there for you. So I highly recommend downloading everything, but we're going to start just with the Rainbow. I already have it installed. After you install it from this window, we're good to go. And then we're just going to create a Rainbow object, and again, that's RNBO tilde, and it's going to open up a subpatcher window, and that's how Rainbow works. It makes a subpatch. Anything you do in here will be compiled when you go to export it. So you got to do as much in here as you can. Now, the important thing to talk about also is, as I had mentioned, we're working with Polyphony. That is the example that I'm trying to show, and the Polyphony feature of this seems to work mainly with MIDI. So we're going to have to use MIDI notes to get everything to work. Very easy. It just uses the same set of objects that you would use in Max. There are a lot of commonalities between the Rainbow patching environment and your main Max patching environment. If we want to get MIDI in, we just need to create a MIDI in inlet, and that's going to bring MIDI in. And you noticed here we now have this right inlet for MIDI stuff. So any MIDI values you want to send into Rainbow need to go into this right inlet. Super easy, super cool, very much the same process. We're going to take that MIDI info and we're going to parse it out with the MIDI parse object into values and components that we can use just like we would normally do. And out of the left inlet, of course, we're going to get the note pitch and velocity. So then I'm going to unpack those values, and there are two of them. So I'm going to say unpack II because they're both integers. We're going to take first the pitch value and we're going to run it through an M2F. And that will convert it from a MIDI note value to a frequency value, which we can then send into a cycle tilde object, which is our sinusoidal oscillator. We're going to get a sine wave at that frequency, at that pitch. And then we're going to just go out signal 1 to create our outlet, patch that through, and now we have an inlet and outlet to work with, so we're almost all set up to at least hear our sinusoidal wave. Back in the main patch window, I'm going to create an easy DAC. We're just going to patch this to both of these for now. Double mono is okay in this instance, and we're going to have to send MIDI into this right inlet. Now, an important thing to remember is because we're dealing with MIDI, we need things to be formatted for MIDI. So we're going to use the MIDI format object to do that. We're going to patch that into that right inlet, and then we're going to create a K slider for easy interactive user interface to create and play some melodies. We just need to take the output of our K slider, which is a pitch and velocity, and we're going to have to pack it together. So we're going to create a list, pack II, patch the pitch into the left, and patch the velocity output into the right, and run that into the MIDI format. And now when I click one of these buttons, cool, great, we're hearing it. Super easy, just like that. And now all we got to do is on the Rainbow setting, say at Polyphony something like 3. And it's going to reload everything, and we're good to go. That's amazing. I'm going to add an audio slider in here real fast, just so we can control the volume. Great. And there you go. See, it was that easy just to get started with Polyphony. But we're going to do some fancy things to make the sound a little bit better. Let's go back into our Rainbow object. And again, as I had mentioned, you have a lot of similarities in this patching window as you do in our main Max window. So we're just going to use some of those features to expand this out a little bit and talk a little bit more about Rainbow in the process. So we have our cycle. One thing I've talked about in a past tutorial video is using multiples of your fundamental frequency to create more complex tones. And it's very easy to do that too. We're just going to take our frequency value and we're going to multiply it by some values. We're going to say we'll multiply it by 2, patch the M to F through into that, and we'll also multiply by 3, patch the M to F in through that, and create 2 more cycle objects for each of these values. And we'll just patch that straight into the output, which will basically add them all together. Now if we turn our volume back up, play some notes. That is gnarly. That is beautiful and gnarly and amazing in every single way. We can keep going. There's so much more we can do. We have a cool complex tone. I'm going to try to make this maybe a little bit fancy by adding a multiply tilde in here to each of these cycle outputs. And this will control the amplitude. If we're multiplying it by 1, it's the same as it just was, because anything multiplied by 1 is that value returned. But we can then create some new cycle objects, which will give us a sinusoidal wave that we can use to control this volume. And if we just set it to something like 1, it'll very slowly come in and out over time. And I'm just going to arbitrarily decide to copy the values I was multiplying by. So this one could be 2, this one could be 3. Again, that is a very arbitrary decision. You can kind of do whatever you think sounds best. But now that we've got that plugged in, let's turn the volume up, see if it changes the sound in any way. Cool. So what we're doing, because we're multiplying the amplitude by that sine wave, you get a tremolo-ish effect. If we really cranked up the frequencies of these cycles, it would very much sound like a tremolo effect. Cool. So that's kind of established. And now another cool feature about Rainbow is it can contain the entire Gen programming language as well. I haven't really talked about Gen much, because that is also a pretty advanced topic that we've got to work our way up into. But as a brief aside, we'll create a gen object. We'll patch all this through our gen real fast, patch that to our output, and then we'll double click gen to go into its patching window, because again, it works with a sub patch. And we're not going to need the second inlet here, and we're not even going to need this right here. One thing I like about gen that anybody can kind of get into right away, even if you've never really experienced or used Gen in any form before, is if you click this Gen DSP icon down here, there's a ton of pre-built Gen patches that you can just drag and drop into your patch, and they are ready to go. Things like reverb and stuff. So let's find one of those. I think it should be about here. Yeah, gigaverb. Let's use that one. So I'll just drag and drop that in, and you see it's gen at gen gigaverb.gen sp. That's loading that gen file. If you double click in it, this is what that gen patch looks like. It's very nice that we do not have to reconstruct this ourselves right now, and it's just ready to go for us. So let's just patch our into that, and then that out to our out. And just for fun, let's drop something else in there. Like another reverb. Why not? Yeah, let's just drop this comb reverb in there. Patch that into here. Actually, this I think is a delay. Yeah. So we'll set a value to be our delay time, which I think we can do using the int message within Gen, because we can't use messages or anything anymore. That is one downside of the Rainbow. If you're used to using messages for things, there's a whole process about that we'll definitely get into in the next video. But for now, just know we can just create an int 100, and that's going to output into that, set that to be the delay time. This value is feedback, which needs a value between -1 and 1, and we're going to say float 9. And the reason, just in case you are wondering yourselves, because I'm sure you are, if you double click into this gen object for this comb filter, you see we have in2 delay, in3 feedback, and if we look in this code box, you see feedback, it's -1 to 1 for that, and then delay is a sample rate. So it's actually in samples. So I should do something more like 10. And if that's samples, then we're going to need a samples 2 millisecond object in between here to go out into that delay inlet. Perfect. So that should be good now. Close that. Go back to our main window. Turn up the volume. Cool. It's getting even better, but it's a little crunchy, so we're gonna have to clean that signal up. And there are, a few different ways we can do that. One very common method is the low res object, which is a low pass filter. We're just gonna set it to something, a cutoff frequency and a resonance. I'm gonna say 40, and we'll say 85 for resonance. Just these values, again, are semi-arbitrary. You would have to kind of tweak them to find what finds right for your patch. But just remember, they're a low pass. It's a low pass filter. So we'll patch that in. Let's turn the volume up, see how much that helps. Yeah, that already does a pretty good job. We're not clipping anymore. And then let's just also, for safety, throw a limit object in here, which is a peak limiter. And we'll stop anything from coming through. We'll set a threshold, something out of like -3, and then we can boost the gain by 1 after it cuts everything, just to help bring the audio back up. And as long as we're still not clipping, I'll say that's okay. And we're not. But it's actually still pretty quiet. Oh, that's because I have the main volume out here down. There we go. Okay. So if this was up all the way. Okay. Yeah, still clipping a little bit. Let's go back. Let's just turn the overall volume amplitude in here down using a multiply tilde object. Let's say something like 0.5 to start with. Patch it through like that above our chin. It seems like a good spot. Let's bring it all the way down to 0.1 to start with. That's pretty good. It's clipping a little bit, but for the most part, it's not. And I could mess around with trying to clean this up for quite some time, but that's pretty good for now. It's a nice, pleasing sound. And if we were happy with this, if this is what the end of our project was, then we're good to export it. And that's also a very easy thing to do now. If we just double click the rainbow object, you see there's this side panel over here, and that's going to show you everything you can export to. There's C+ code, there's web support through JavaScript. If I had an Arduino or a Raspberry Pi plugged in, that would pop up here. And then, you have your audio plugin and your Max external as well. So say you wanted to export this as an audio plugin for somebody to use in something like Ableton or Logic or Pro Tools, then you would just click audio plugin. You would click the little arrow. This is going to pop up with all these identifiers. So, metadata, that type of thing. You can just give it a name, basically. Say rainbow test, and then choose where you want it to output to. I'm gonna select my desktop for now. Great, and then you would just click export to select a target, and it's gonna run its process, and it might take a second. Great, and that's done. We don't need Max anymore. We're just gonna close out of this. You should save. I'm not going to. And then, bam, here's the file right here on my desktop computer. And we're going to have to go into the Macintosh HD setting, library, audio, plugins, and then here I have these folders. I've got this VST3 stuff. I have this VST in here. I've made this plug-in test stuff to drop the folders into, and I have some tests that I've already run. We're gonna drop this rainbow test VST3 into this folder here. With it, you can also drag and drop this text folder for organization's sake, if that helps. And now that that is in there, we're good to go. We can close out of this. We can open up Ableton or your choice of DAW. And it might be different for you depending on which DAW you use, but if you use Ableton, you gotta then go into Preferences, go to the Plug-in Audio Preferences tab, and you're gonna see these options. And it's helpful just to click everything on. Use VST plugin and custom folder on, use VST3 plugin custom folder on. This is actually the one you definitely want on because we are exporting as a VST3. And then you see it says VST plugin custom folder. You're gonna click browse, and you're gonna go and find that file folder where you just dragged and dropped your VST into. And then once you have that folder selected in here, it's gonna load it in. You may have to restart Ableton at this point, just close it and reopen. But then after that, if you go to VST3, there's gonna be these options here, and you see I now have my rainbow test as a option, which we can then drag and drop into. If you, in Max, create a nice user interface for your patch, it's going to show up here, but I didn't do that, so this is just the default. But again, it's all good, and because it takes MIDI input, it should just be ready to go. And yeah, it seems to be working. I'm typing on my keyboard right now, and we are hearing the synth we just created. And that's that. There you go. Very basic look at the rainbow object, the Polyphony feature, and exporting it and dropping it into a DAW such as Ableton. I hope everything was very clear. If you did learn something, please remember to like and subscribe, because that's how I know you like something. If you still have questions, please feel free to leave that in the comments down below. I'm sure there are going to be many questions about Rainbow since it is brand new. And again, we're going to do a few different videos on the topic. This is just the first intro of just showing some things that I really liked about Rainbow. So with that, yeah, definitely hope you guys learned something, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks so much for watching.